Yet we are all, every one of us here, beset by discontinuity. People quarrel, get sick, die, fall away. Rarely does the momentum of things permit repair or reconciliation. Rarely do we throttle back. Even in nature, even in our beloved national parks, that momentum of life has a way of distracting us. We are now used to and come to expect a windshield experience, a quick drive-through, and anything else is a bit frightening, time-consuming, other. The intimate specificity of nature, seen in the highest of mountains or in a speck of lichen on a rock, its ever-enlarging vastness, is lost in the control we seek to superimpose over the chaos, the random chaos of events. For many of us, we just don't have the time to submit, to enroll, as it were, as students in the great classroom our natural world provides, its curriculum endless and varied, sustaining and vital. In short, we have ignored the extraordinary commonwealth that is waiting just outside the city limits, in this case, right inside the city limits, ready to end the poverty of spirit that afflicts all of us from time to time. My mother was slowly dying of cancer, and our household, as you can imagine, was a grim and demoralized place. And he had not been the best of fathers either. Baseball catches in the backyard were few and far between. Attendance at my games non-existent. He was moody and distracted by my mother's illness and by inner demons none of us, my mother, younger brother, or me, fully understood. Demons that would consume him most of his too short life. But one Friday after school, he and I drove from our home in Newark, Delaware, to my grandparents' house, the place he had grown up in Baltimore, Maryland. We went to bed late. I slept in his old bedroom, in his old bed, under his old chenille comforter. And it seemed like only a second later that my father was leaning over me in the dark, gently touching my shoulder, urging me to get up. I had never been up so early in my life. It was still dark as we left the house, and I can still now remember, 50 years later, all the things we talked about, butterflies and baseball, the route we were taking, the battlefields of the Civil War we had just passed. As the sun came up and we made our way pre-interstate system to Front Royal, Virginia, and the northern entrance of Shenandoah National Park. The Skyline Drive runs along the spine of the ridge that makes up the relatively small park, and that morning there was still fog and mist and cloud hugging the road. I had never been in a cloud before. We went through short tunnels carved through the mountains, and we saw a handful of deer standing stock still before us on the road before my dad scattered them with his car horn. After what seemed like hours in this beautiful new world, we turned off the drive and checked into a small cabin, just big enough for the two of us. It was chilly, and my dad insisted that I put on a jeans jacket with red lining he had just bought, and we set off down a trail that led eventually to a small waterfall. It was an impossibly long hike for my young legs, probably all of a half a mile. But I held my father's hand, and I can now remember his grip to this day. We saw a bear, I think. We turned over rotting logs and caught a bright red salamander, and my father named every butterfly and plant and tree we saw. I don't remember what or even where we ate that night, but I do remember lying awake, as I would do years later alone in Yosemite, thinking how great this was to be in this magical place, with memory and emotion attached so securely, this time with my dad. The next day we had more hikes and more adventures before we headed home. My dad sang to me songs like Wolverton Mountain, Silver Threads and Golden Needles, Scarlet Ribbons, and other folk songs that are permanently on my hard drive. But when I had later sung them to my three children, I had forgotten when I learned them. Later, after my epiphany at Yosemite, my then 16-year-old middle daughter Lily was dragged down that same Skyline Drive as I attempted to recreate what a distracted father and his desperately young son had experienced as the 1950s came to a close and tragedy closed in on my family. This time, Lily and I most definitely saw lots of bears. When that memory-stirred night in Yosemite came in May of 2003, my father had been gone for more than a year and a half. And I suppose it is reasonable to ask, confronting such an epic story as that of the national park, what purpose these personal stories serve. But the narrative of the parks is not just in their spectacular scenery, the waterfalls and big trees and wildlife, or even in the complicated sagas of the charismatic individuals who save these places. It is also about who we see these sacred places with, whose hand we are holding at the rim of the Grand Canyon or in Shenandoah National Park. What intimate transmissions, as William Cronin would say, occur between the generations as we instill this love of the parks to our posterity. Another way to think about it is to turn it around and say, what would we be like without the national parks? You know, the Grand Canyon would be, we would not be able to see that view. It would all be occupied by mansions of the rich. Zion and Yosemite, two of the most beautiful valleys on earth, would be gated communities. The Everglades would have long ago been drained and be filled with endless track housing, golf courses, and shopping malls. You know, and Yellowstone, your child's, you know, new discovery would be called Geyser World.